All right, here's your scenario. A professor uses a phrase that can be construed as sexually suggestive. All the hearing students are laughing, but the professor continues his lecture without further comment. The deaf students are curious about the laughter and ask you to clarify. What's the conflict? What would you do about it, and why?
Okay, the conflict is that the student is asking me to add additional explanation concerning what the professor has said, and they're wondering why the students laughed. The question is, what do I do about that? Do I add the additional comment or do I not? The Code of Professional Conduct requires that I render the message faithfully and in the spirit in which it was intended, and also that I don't add any advice or personal opinion. The perspective of the deaf student is that they want full and equal access to information just like the hearing students, and are looking to me as the interpreter to provide them with that information. The perspective of the professor is that the professor wants to get the information across to all the students, whether they're the deaf students or the hearing students. It's the same information. The hearing students have already had the benefit of that double entendre, and the deaf students have not. My perspective is that I want to provide the best interpreting service that I can for my student. The solution is that I would add, I'm assuming that I would know, that I would add the explanation of the double meaning, because that would be culturally appropriate. The hearing students have that cultural background to know this extra information, and I would provide that cultural mediation for the deaf student as well. That would show respect for deaf consumers, in that I would provide them equal access to the communication that was provided. It's not a violation of the adding personal opinion, because it's not my personal opinion, it is more of a cultural mediation. And I am providing the message in the spirit and the content that was delivered. So that would be my solution, is that I would add the interpretation, the explanation. The consequence of that is, in the short term, the deaf student would understand and be able to laugh along with his classmates, and the professor would go on with his lecture and not have any disruption. The long-term effect or consequence is that the deaf student could look to me as a cultural mediator, as well as interpreting strictly words. I would also be providing the intent and spirit and cultural mediation.
3.5 minutes.